By day, Julian Brave NoiseCat, who hails from the Canim Lake Band in British Columbia and grew up in Oakland, works as a policy analyst for an organization dedicated to building a global grassroots climate movement. But by night, he writes. His writing has been featured in The Guardian, Jacobin, Fusion, HuffPost, Indian Country Today, Salon, and others. His writing and photography have appeared in Canadian Geographic. His op-ed on the Attawapascot suicide crisis won first place for editorial in the National Native Media Awards last year, and he's been invited to consult on the forthcoming UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. In his work and in his writing, he has tried to inhabit a quote from his late grandfather, a survivor of the residential school system and a laborer with a sixth grade education, who told him, "Shake the hand that shakes the world." Please welcome Julian Brave NoiseCat.
Thank you. Wait, Julian Brave NoiseCat wen Tsq'escen, Sequachmoch'en el Statlimk'en, that Tsq'escen wech Stequen. Let wen poopsman ne Eliatik Tamich, Wipiscataway Uluch. Hello everyone, my name is Julian Brave NoiseCat. I'm a proud member of the Secwepemc Nation and descendant of the Lil'Wat Nation, and my relatives reside on the Canim Lake Reserve in British Columbia. It is good to be here today on Piscataway traditional territory in Washington, D.C. I tell you who I come from and where I come from. I tell you where I am and whose lands I stand upon. I tell you in two languages to maximize your opportunity to understand. I tell you because these things matter. Our ancestors, the land, our origin stories, our histories. These things ground us in our past so that we can look forward with a proper perspective to shape our collective future. These things matter. Before I get into the heart of my talk, I want to give you a brief account of my bona fides. Why did this great institution invite me here today to talk to all of you? How is it that I am qualified to speak on monuments, memory, and injustice on this land? How is it that why do I have the audacity to suggest that some monuments must come down while others should go up? I'm a student of colonial history. I've had the privilege of studying this topic and writing about it at two of the world's greatest academic institutions. I may sometimes have felt myself a bit out of place at these schools, but I was there on this continent and across the Atlantic in the UK. And I applied my time to learn about this world's colonial past and its often overlooked impact on our present. I'm an activist. As a student at Oxford, I was part of the organizing committee for the Roads Must Fall movement. We campaigned to decolonize curriculum, faculty, and most visibly to remove a statue of Cecil Rhodes. As a student at Columbia University, I led a campaign to erect a small plaque recognizing the Lenape, the first people of Manhattan on whose lands that great but poorly named university stands. Today, I work on behalf of the climate movement through 350.org. I feel awesomely privileged to have all of these experiences, just as I am humbled to stand before you all today. Here is where my story for today begins, in the financial epicenter of our planet. A marble Christopher Columbus, sporting knee-length regal robes, places his hand at his waist with a gesture that can only be described as imperious. He surveys Manhattan from atop a 75-foot granite column. The statue, designed by Italian artist Gaetano Russo and erected in 1892 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of this colonizer's first voyage to the Americas, rules the center of the traffic circle at the intersection of 8th Avenue, Broadway, 59th Street, and Central Park West. Since 1905, the traffic circle and surrounding blocks have been known as Columbus Circle. To the southeast, in the direction of Columbus's gaze, lies Midtown. Its 50-plus story stacks of capital, called skyscrapers, tower over city streets and urbanites, testimony to America's wealth, world dominance, and economic hegemony. The Statue of Columbus marks the exact point from which all distances to New York City are officially measured. Located at the heart of the largest and greatest American city, home of the engine room of global capitalism, this Columbus is one of the world's most iconic monuments and memorials to United States history and Western civilization. It was commissioned during the explosion of wealth and industry that occurred during America's Gilded Age. It was commissioned just 2 years after the closure of the frontier in 1890. It celebrates Europeans' discovery and mastery of the Americas. It is, above all, a public monument to conquest. Currently, monuments to our country's history, reprehensible history of slavery, segregation, and oppression of African Americans are a heated battleground in our ongoing culture wars, most notably in Charlottesville and New Orleans. There in the Big Easy in May of 2017, Mayor Mitch Landrieu delivered a moving speech after instigating the removal of 4 Confederate monuments. Quote, "The Confederacy was on the wrong side of history and humanity," said Landrieu. "It sought to tear apart our nation and subjugate our fellow Americans to slavery. This is the history we should never forget and one that we should never again put on a pedestal to be revered." New Orleans is one of many sites literally deconstructing memorials to historical oppressors. From South Africa to the University of Oxford, and many cities and college campuses in between, a long overdue conversation about how the past is memorialized is happening, particularly around markers honoring men who led regimes in campaigns rooted in racial oppression. But not all histories of oppression are equally visible. While politicians and the public have called for a more accurate reflection of racism and oppression against African Americans, monuments to the history of genocide against Native Americans have received scant attention. The Columbus Circle statue is but one prominent monument to America's misunderstood and wrongly celebrated colonial past. There are statues of former President Andrew Jackson, the man responsible for the Trail of Tears, Saint Junipero Serra, the architect of California's mission system, which was purpose-built to obliterate Native culture and enslave indigenous peoples. There are monuments to General George Armstrong Custer, a noted Indian killer who took pride in killing people who were peaceful and unarmed, including women and children. And Juan de Oñate, the first colonial governor of what is now New Mexico, who brutalized and enslaved the Pueblo people. There are many monuments across these United States that celebrate oppression and dispossession. In addition, there are cities, counties, schools, and parks that take their names from men with the blood of innocents on their hands. And there is no reckoning, or at least too little. The language of discovery, expansion, and manifest destiny that Americans use to describe our history obscures the bloody massacres that actually occurred. Monuments to Columbus, Serra, Custer, and Oñate represent without representing accurately. They celebrate when instead we should reflect and perhaps even mourn. Monuments are often funded by public subsidies. Some are funded by private wealth. No matter where the money comes from, though, they elevate certain historical moments and figures for posterity. They tell a story about who we come from and where we come from. But because they are built almost exclusively by victors and elites, the stories these monuments tell obscure the truth, a truth that belongs to all of us. Thankfully, History, society, and culture are not set in stone. As time passes, monuments become sites for political struggle, where oppressed and marginalized groups contest narratives of conquest and the values and hierarchies they represent. If we look at other English-speaking nations with similar histories of brutality against Indigenous peoples, such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, it is clear that the United States is exceptional in its inability to confront its own history of colonization. Why is the US different? Perhaps because other Anglo nations remained attached to the British Empire well into the 20th century, and that attachment made them more self-conscious about their imperial origins and identity. In Canada, a country founded upon a myth of fairness, there is daily public attention to and debate about the treatment of First Nations. In Australia, there are ongoing history wars over whether the country's origin story is in fact genocide. Meanwhile, Aotearoa, more commonly known as New Zealand, is officially a bicultural nation where the country's indigenous Maori are accorded equal status as founding partners alongside Pākehā, or English colonists. In these English-speaking countries, all founded on parallel histories of settlement and colonization, indigenous peoples stand at the center of national debates about racism, history, and national identity. While in the US, there's silence. Some might claim that all is quiet on the indigenous front because slavery and segregation were such morbid stains on the fabric of the nation that one injustice overshadows the other. But this view is unconvincing. There is no need to use an imagined moral yardstick to measure and compare these reprehensible wrongs to determine which is deserving of public attention. They are both deserving. The continent-sized theft of land, labor, and life from Native Americans is monstrously unjust, as is the Atlantic-wide enslavement, colonization, and segregation of Africans. Moreover, in a nation that celebrates its fierce history of anti-colonial independence, lionized with monuments to the Founding Fathers, this denial of the Native American story is antithetical. So why is all quiet on the pervasive erasure of indigenous history in America? At the heart of the issue is the fact that in the United States, First Peoples are largely invisible. Many Americans have never met a Native person. Most think that we have vanished or are so marginal as to be statistically insignificant. The erasure of Native presence enables the inheritors of this continent to speak of discovery, expansion, and manifest destiny without reckoning with the lives of people, my people, who were plowed under so that this nation could stretch from sea to shining sea. In 2016, after a long campaign led by Native students, myself among them, Columbia University, named for the conqueror, erected a small plaque honoring the indigenous Lenape, who gave the borough of Manhattan its name. It reads, "In honor of the Lenape people. The Lenape lived here before and during colonization of the Americas. This plaque recognizes these indigenous people of Manhattan, their displacement, dispossession, and continued presence. It stands as a reminder to reflect on our past as we contemplate our way forward." By asserting our current presence and enduring history, Native people break the silence of erasure. In so doing, we force the United States to reckon with the true history of dispossession and death upon which this union was founded, one statue, monument, and plaque at a time. Tsq'escen. Thank you.
Julian Brave NoiseCat, thank you so much.